Hello and welcome into this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lav. The player who was the favorite to win the Masters ended up winning the Masters. Scottie Scheffler, the world number one, a 4-1 favorite entering the 88th Masters tournament. Indeed goes on to win by 4 shots, won the tournament 11 under par, 4 shots better than Ludvig Oberg after a final round 68. Rex, it wasn't quite the scoring bonanza that we anticipated on Saturday night, but the best player won this golf tournament. It has to feel like a satisfying ending for you.
It does. I don't think it had the excitement coming down the stretch that all of us sort of anticipated, hoped for, whatever you want to put in there. I will say this, and we talked about this on the podcast last night. There was a member that came skipping up the stairs today in the media building, and it was like right before the leaders got to the turn. And he had a big smile on his face, and he turned to me and he goes, "This is going to be exciting. There's going to be birdies." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Like they know the science of this. They have figured it out." This year, to a certain degree, maybe it added up. But if you actually look at the scores, if you look at the excitement, and I think this is probably more of a testament to what Scottie Scheffler, how good Scottie Scheffler is playing the game right now, because everyone else around him was trying to make a run, and he just would not give in. And I immediately went to your boy Oberg. I think he probably made the best run. He makes a 36-footer for birdie on number 9 to tie for the lead temporarily, however temporarily. And yet he never really has a chance. I never felt like on the back 9 that, we could have something exciting. There was never that moment.
Yeah, I don't think this Masters Sunday was a snoozer. I was talking to a fellow media member out there, and the conversation did come up like, did the golf gods have to sell something, or did golf media have to sell something in order to get the 2019 Masters? With Tiger Woods winning his 15th major championship, it was an absolutely epic Sunday. Ever since then, we have had blowout victories. It has been at least 3 shots each and every Masters since 2019, whether it was Dustin Johnson, whether it was Hideki Matsuyama, whether it was Scottie Scheffler the first time, whether it was Jon Rahm last year, and now it's Scottie Scheffler once again by 4 shots. I think the final outcome is indicative of the way Scottie Scheffler played. But for a long time, Rex, I would say almost half of the final round, the outcome was certainly in doubt. I mean, at one point, Scottie Scheffler on the 8th tee, there was a 4-way tie for the lead.
Yeah.
Then Kyle Morikawa and Scottie Scheffler go a shot ahead. And then I think the tournament really swung on the 9th hole with Scottie Scheffler, just a wedge into the 9th green up the hill, almost holds it out. One of 6 birdies that he recorded over his last 11 holes. And I think what we saw unfold over a 30-minute span when Scottie Scheffler made birdie on 10 and Ludvig Oberg made an uncharacteristic mistake going in the water on 11, and then Max Homa either misjudged the wind or misclubbed, whatever the case may be, goes into the back bushes and makes double on 12. That is a sign of what Scottie Scheffler does best, where he gets himself out of trouble, he hits the necessary shots, and then he waits and watches as other players are then forced to try and match his near perfection and end up making costly miscues that doom their chances. That, to me, was a story of this Masters. How much he has separated himself, not just with his technical excellence, which is obvious to anyone who watches him play golf, but it's now a mentality that he has kind of forced upon the competitors, that they have to play nearly mistake-free golf to beat him, and more times than not, at least over his last 4 starts, it's just not happening.
I talked about this last night on Live From, the idea being, this is what Tiger Woods did in his prime. Everyone thought Tiger Woods showed up at a major championship in his prime and was just brilliant and magnificent, and he would go on to win by multiple strokes. And the truth of the matter is, more times than not, he would show up and do exactly what Scottie Scheffler did today. He would just play what Stuart Sink once told me. He called it a prevent defense. It's kind of a hockey term, where I'm just not going to let you score. Like, I'm not worrying about scoring, but if I can just keep you from scoring, eventually I'm going to wear you down. And I think that's what Scottie did today. And again, it's what Tiger Woods did really well in his prime. I was taken by the idea that, listening to Scottie in his press conference tonight, and we'll kind of break it down a little bit more, this one was different than last time around, 2 years ago. This one was exhausting. You could tell. This one sort of took a toll physically and probably mentally on him, just because the conditions were so difficult. Whereas last time around, he seemed to get out to a quick lead early, and it was just a matter of maintaining that lead, and no one kind of came after him. And he sort of goes to the last hole in 4 putts. That is sort of indicative that was the snapshot of the last Masters victory, where I could 4 putt because I'd played so well for 71 holes that it's not going to hurt me. I'm still going to win. This time around, he 1 putted the last hole. And it was just a grind from start to finish. The conditions were so hard, especially on Thursday and Friday. And this version of Scottie Scheffler is so much better prepared. And we talked about this last night on the podcast, I think, because I talked to Randy Smith, his swing coach, last night. And I wanted to know what's the difference between Scottie now and Scottie 2 years ago. And he goes, look, he's the same player. He's certainly the same person. We all know that about him. But he's a better competitor. That he's got 2 years underneath his belt. He's got 2 years of victory. He's got 2 years of defeat and everything else in between. And he knows, he's been through those battles. He knows exactly what to expect. And I mean, it almost felt to me, I mean, you pointed out that through 9 holes, it was still very much, kind of hanging in the balance. It only took a hole or two. As you pointed out, Ludvig hits in the water on number 11. Things start falling apart for Morikawa. Once he got to 12 or 13, I didn't feel like it was in doubt.
No, I mean, it certainly didn't feel that way. I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that Scottie went into prevent defense and was playing conservatively. I mean,
I don't think you can on this golf course, to your point, and to Scottie's point.
But like to listen to, so at the very end of Scottie Scheffler's press conference, I don't know when they replay this on Live for the Masters, whether you guys can hear it at home, but Scottie goes through the clubs and the shots that he hit to record his birdies and his bogeys in the final round. And I was struck by the number of long irons that Scottie Scheffler was hitting in the final round. He said 3 iron 3 times, 4 iron twice. I mean, this is a guy who was putting the pedal down on par 5 holes, the most consequential holes on the golf course. He was taking all of the risk on, whether it was 8, ripping it up into the back right portion of the green, whether it was 13, the momentous decision that has been restored after Augusta National lengthened that hole, 15, which had caused problems for players over the last 54 holes with changing wind conditions. I mean, he was taking those shots on. There was no let up. There was no playing safe. There was no conservative approach. He was ripping 3 and 4 irons into those holes. And the difference is he was pulling them off. He was the one who was pulling it off, getting up and down on 8. He was the one who was pulling it off with a 2-putt birdie on 13. He was the one who was pulling it off, just missing in the right spot on 15. And even though he didn't get up and down, it did not cost him any shots or any sort of momentum as he then stuck it to about 10 feet on 16 and made yet another birdie. This wasn't prevent defense. This was relying on his strength, and it is such a superior advantage that Scottie Scheffler possesses, particularly with his iron play. I mean, he was going head-to-head, Rex, in this final round with Collin Morikawa, who ever since he burst on the PGA Tour in 2019 has been, if not the best iron player on the PGA Tour, one of the top 5 best iron players on the PGA Tour. And this was an absolute clinic. He out-sharpshooted Collin Morikawa, which would have seemed unfathomable 3 or 4 years ago when Collin Morikawa was at the height of his powers. I think it just goes to show the gap between Scottie Scheffler and the rest of the field right now. What do you think we're looking at here, Rex? Because this is a player now who has lost a total of 1 golfer over his past 4 starts. That was Steven Yeager at the Houston Open. A very strange week for Scottie Scheffler, where he made a couple boneheaded mistakes, missed a short putt. On the 72nd hole, he had missed a 4-footer that would have gotten him into a playoff. I mean, this is as good of a run as we have seen now that it includes a major championship and the Players' Championship and a signature event. This is the best run we've seen since late 2000s Tiger.
I mean, it's Tiger. That's it. And again, we hate to do that. I hate to do that because it's not fair, because it's putting such unrealistic expectations on someone.
I guess Rory 2014, who won 2
major and Jordan Spieth in 2015 would be the other one that I would kind of think of off the top of my head, because he was on a run. For a moment, it looked like he could win the single season Grand Slam. So there was a conversation to be had there. But this is really good because it's sustained. I guess I would immediately go to the idea that as well as he is playing right now, and he's certainly playing well, there's 2 things that stood out to me. One, today was a grind, and he was able to grind it out. And even though he wins by 4 strokes, like it was harder than the sum of its parts. I would caution anyone, if you're just being a scoreboard watcher and you're like, oh, he ran away with this, it was easy. It was not easy. Like he had to grind this one out, and it was a tough victory, and he's going to be proud of it. The other half of this is, well, 2 things. One, he talked about he had some neck issues this week, and this is becoming an ongoing theme. Like we're starting to hear more and more about this. He had the KT tape on the back of his neck. I think that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because anytime a player starts having injuries, even little injuries, even little nagging injuries, and the way he sort of explained it is, look, it's stress. Like I'm really stressed out trying to win the Masters. I'm stressed out trying to do this with my wife is at home and she's pregnant. Like I got a lot going on in my life, man. And this is how it manifests itself. If that's the case, then that's fine. But it's certainly a little concerning. And I also point out the idea.
You're concerned by this neck issue. Scottie Scheffler had pretty serious back issues in college. I mean, he was a phenomenal junior player, one of the best players to come out of the state of Texas, right up there with Jordan Spieth. But in college, he kind of had a 2-year period where he had a lot of back issues because of the severe growth spurt that he had. I think he grew about 14 inches in a 1-year span, threw everything out of whack. I think there was actually some question during his sophomore and junior year whether Scottie Scheffler was actually going to be able to fulfill all the immense promise that he has. That's why Scottie Scheffler has worked so hard in the gym, Rex, since turning pro. It's not necessarily trying to get jacked or put on muscle and look like Brooks Koepka. It's trying to maintain his flexibility. It's trying to maintain kind of the core strength that allows him to swing as violently and as beautifully as he does, and yet still not have these issues. It seemed to me, at least, that this is a minor issue for Scottie Scheffler, and he is now probably poised to sit out a few weeks.
I hope so. And sitting out a few weeks is really not in the cards, to be honest with you, because he's got to play next week, or you would assume he's going to play.
Doesn't have to.
He's in the field next week in Hilton Head, I guess, a signature event. To put it another way, he certainly can sit out the Zurich Classic the week after that, the team event, the Nelson the week after that, going into what will be a really busy stretch. Again, the other half of this equation, and he said it tonight, like his wife is at home, Meredith is at home waiting for the birth of their first child. We know, of the few things that we know for certain about Scottie Scheffler, he's going to be an awesome dad, and he's going to put his family first. And that's always a challenge for a player in this particular situation. I mean, we've seen it time and time again where you can be dominant and you have to be really selfish in this game to be a dominant player. It's a selfish game to begin with. And if you're going to be that good, you have to spend a lot of hours by yourself on the range, working, trying to get everything absolutely perfect. So when you show up at the Masters, you look like Scottie Scheffler did this week. I think Scottie, more than anyone, can juggle that. He seems to have probably the best head on his shoulders of any top player I have seen. I mean, even before Tiger Woods, because let's face it, in retrospect, Tiger Woods had stuff going on in his life too that we didn't know about. It will be a challenge, though. So I will concede to you the idea that this is a Tiger-like run. And I would concede to you that I fully expect it to continue. Like there's nothing in his body of work that suggests to me that he's running up against a wall or that he's ready to slow down. But there are things that make me wonder how much can he continue to add to this legacy the way he's done so far?
Isn't it amazing, Rex, that a human life, a baby, a new child who is coming in the next few weeks could disrupt a Tiger-like run? If Scottie Scheffler has craved anything,
I don't like to say that, though.
I know.
I hate to say that,
but it is a significant life change, and I think it's significant, Rex, because of this. Scottie Scheffler has craved consistency through his entire life and through his entire career. Just look at the stable of people who have surrounded him. He's clearly a devoted family man. He talks about his parents in every press conference, his sisters who travel with him to countless junior tournaments. He shouted them out in the green jacket ceremony. Like they are extremely close, and they have continued to be close. He has worked with his swing coach, Randy Smith, since he was 7 years old. Randy Smith's son is Blake Smith, who has known Scottie his entire life and is now Scottie Scheffler's agent. He made the decision to just recently, last fall, move to Phil Kenyon. And that was a huge shakeup because it showed no ego on Randy Smith's part. And he was bringing essentially a new member of the team into the fold. And Scottie Scheffler did so, saying because Phil Kenyon was open-minded. But that took a lot of trust. that took a lot of, I think, open-mindedness from the entire team. And now, over these past 8-9 months, they have welcomed a new member of the team, and that has remained consistent. A life change, welcoming your couple's first child. I didn't even mention Meredith, who they've been together since high school. I mean, this has been a very stable life that Scottie Scheffler has enjoyed. It's just interesting to think that this could all be disrupted, at least paused, suspended, maybe a temporary hiatus during one of the best runs that we've seen in the next 15 years. I'm not saying it. I mean, he could potentially win the PGA Championship by 10 shots. Who knows? But it is interesting that this life event is being thrown smack in the middle of it.
Yeah, and I don't like that. Like, that makes my skin crawl a little bit, because I mean, anybody that's had kids will tell you, like, welcoming them into your life is one of the best things that can possibly happen to you. And I'm sure Scottie.
No, it's just interesting from a golf perspective that this is happening now.
And again, this goes to the idea, and this is not specific to Scottie Scheffler or any other top player. You got to be really, really selfish to do this for a living. You have to be even more selfish to become world number one and to win major championships. I will say, we can't run sound from the press conference tonight. I wish we could, because it was the question you asked and you just referenced it. And it was such a good answer that he gave. And your question essentially was, how did you come to the idea of bringing Phil Kenyon into the camp? Because you're right, that had to be a hard decision. That had to be a tough decision. And Scottie sort of laid it out that it was on a plane ride home from East Lake last year, the Tour Championship. And he turned to Blake and he said, they were kind of thinking the same thing, that maybe I need to go see someone. And from there, everything grew. That we talked about it a lot at the Ryder Cup and into the fall and into the new season. And I'm not saying that Phil was a savior, because my guess is Scottie Scheffler was still going to be Scottie Scheffler. But I don't know that he would have been this version of Scottie, because this version, we've said it time and time again. If he puts average, I like his chances to win. If he puts well, he's going to win by 4 like he did today.
That's exactly what happened over 72 holes at Augusta National. Scottie Scheffler was 22nd in the field in strokes gained putting. That is above average. And Scottie Scheffler won his second green jacket by 4 shots. For more on Scottie Scheffler, you can read my column, soon to be written, on NBC Sports.
Have you started?
I have not started. It is going to be a very late evening here at Augusta National. That's what I'm writing. Rex, what did you write for the website and why?
Still working on it. And the idea being that Fuzzy Zoeller was the first timer to win the Masters back in 1979, almost a half decade ago. When I actually did the math, I was like, man, that was a long time ago. And when you look at what Ludvig did today, it's absolutely amazing to me that he seems so comfortable, so relaxed. You watch the telecast, you were out there on the golf course. I don't know that anyone enjoyed themselves as much as he did today when you watch him sort of bounce around the golf course and happily. And I don't do this lightly, because records at Augusta National have a tendency of holding up more times than not. But that record that Fuzzy was the last one to do it is bound to fall. And I'm going to make the argument in this column that it's bound to fall quickly, because all you have to do is sort of look at recent history. Players are just better prepared now when they show up here. I didn't even realize this. So I talked to Luda's caddy, and Joe Scavron, who used to caddy for Ricky Fowler, and he did a really good job this week of making him feel comfortable and sort of showing him all the nuances of the golf course. Those are the things that we say that, yeah, then this is going to be hard because he doesn't know where to miss, or he doesn't know what this putt does or that chip does, or whatever the case may be. He did a really good job. And I had totally blanked when I'm talking to Joe tonight, and he goes, well, Tom Kim last year was in the exact same situation. And I had forgotten that Tom Kim was playing his first Masters last year and finished inside the top 20 with Joe on the bag. And I just think it's a really good example of why we've talked about this before. Players who have come out of college are so much better prepared, and certainly in Oberg's case, because he comes out, he wins on the European Tour, he makes the Ryder Cup team, he does really, really well in Rome at the Ryder Cup, he wins on the PGA Tour at the RSM Classic. And not only was this his first Masters, it was his first major. And I'm kind of blown away by the idea that players are so much better prepared now that it's inevitable that someone is going to win the Masters in their first start sooner rather than later.
The most amazing thing about Ludo was the fact that this wasn't just his first Masters start. This was his first major championship start ever. And yet he still almost had an opportunity to win the golf tournament. And we've seen over the past decade that players in their debut have fared well, whether it was Jordan Spieth coming out and almost winning in 2014. We've seen Will Zalatoris play his way to the final group in 2021. Sung Jae Im in his first one in 2020 finished inside the top 5 as well. And now Oberg, who clearly has the goods and I think has to be on the short list of major championships. I guess the counter to that, Rex, would be that Ludvig still made enough mistakes that you could show that this was that
One
you could
mistake.
that he was a first timer.
One
You
mistake
absolutely
on 11.
you
One
cannot miss left on that. I don't know. He was in his press conference. I didn't hear whether he said, but the bailout is obvious. It's exactly where Scottie Scheffler missed.
It's the 12th
his
tee.
ball.
Yeah,
Is exactly. You just miss right at that green. Take your chances. A 5 is not going to kill you, whereas a 6 ultimately doomed his chances. I also think that experience kind of shows in Scheffler's caddy, Ted Scott, who now has 4 green jackets to his credit, 2 with Bubba Watson and now 2 with Scottie Scheffler. There's still mystique. There's still magic. There's still something to be said for experience. I do agree with you that we're getting closer, and we've seen enough evidence to suggest that this will probably go down at least somewhat soon. But this was also the best Masters rookie class maybe we've ever seen, between reigning U.S. Open champion Wyndham Clark, who missed the cut, Nikolai Hogard, who flew a little bit too close to the sun on Saturday, made 5 straight bogeys, and ultimately finished over par for the tournament, and then Oberg in his very first Masters getting close, but no cigar as well. So I do think, obviously, hats off to him. He's got to be no worse than 5, 6, 7 on your top 7 list of favorites for the PGA Championship. He certainly looks like he has the goods. How about your other takeaways from the week, Rex? Whether it was Tiger, whether it was Max Homa, whether it was Bryson DeChambeau, Rory McIlroy's continued streak of futility at Augusta National. What else stood out to you?
Tiger. Well, let's go straight to Tiger from there, because he finished up not on a high note. Like he was
DFL.
better. He was better than he was on Saturday, but yeah, he finished 60th out of 60 players who made the cut. I will say, and this was a tough one to write, and you kind of came in and pointed out a headline that sort of had me second guessing what I had written, because it was a good news, bad news thing. And it was mostly bad news. Like, to be fair, it was not entirely good news. The good news was he made it 72 holes. And I think both of us probably would agree at the beginning of the week that making the cut should have been the goal. He's never going to admit that. He's never going to say that. But just making it 72 holes. He hadn't played 72 holes in more than a year on the PGA Tour. So this was going to be a challenge. It was the most difficult golf course you could possibly walk. He was the worst case scenario, with him only playing 13 holes on Thursday and having to play 23 on Friday, with temperatures in the 50s when he teed off. Like, that is just a recipe for disaster for Tiger Woods. That's the good news, that he was at least able to make it around. He was able to test his body. The bad news is the game is just awful right now. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Like, it's just bad. Like, you raced out, as we joked about last night on the podcast, thinking that, oh, of course he's going to withdraw. Like, he's playing terrible. He's limping. It looks like he's in pain. So you raced out yesterday halfway through his round. And my take was, I don't know how much pain he's actually in, other than just the idea he's just playing really bad golf right now. He's not doing anything close to what Tiger Woods is capable of doing. If you look at the players that beat him this week, it's almost embarrassing, because you didn't have to, it seems like you didn't have to play all that great to make the cut and to finish last in the field. He has so much room to make up for. Now, he did say that he needs to start working on getting ready for Valhalla, the PGA Championship, getting ready for Pinehurst, the U.S. Open, getting ready for Rural Troon, the Open Championship. That, to me, is a good sign, because at least he's looking ahead. But, man, the game's just not there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to dissect with this. I think it's obvious now why we did not see Tiger Woods play a golf tournament over the past 2 months. There's talk, he needs to play Bay Hill. He's won 8 times. I think that ship has kind of sailed. I was one who said he's got to play the Players Championship. Easy flight from South Florida, flat golf course. He's won there. Tour's flagship event. Like, he needs to get some tournament reps, and he did not play. You were the one who on the podcast a couple of weeks ago pointed out, I think quite accurately, that when he played at the Seminole Pro Member, the game was rusty there, and he just wasn't physically prepared to tee it up against elite competition like this. Where I'm a little bit confused after his weekend rounds of 82 and 77. And keep in mind, he was just outside the top 20 after 36 holes when the cut was made, was that when he was talking about Valhalla, when he was talking about Pinehurst, it certainly at least sounds, as you sit here on April 14th, that he is going to try and play the next major championship in a month's time, that his answer to how he's going to get ready for the challenge is to just, quote, keep lifting, keep the motor going, keep the body moving,
keep the motor going,
longer, keep progressing. Hopefully the practice sessions will keep getting longer. My question, Rex, is how is that the answer continually to this, is to just keep getting stronger? You were in the Bahamas for the Hero World Challenge. That is as optimistic as we've seen and heard Tiger in a long time. He did not have many physical ailments that kept him from playing in that golf tournament, ended up finishing 18th out of 20 players. How are we now at that point, 4 months later, 5.5 competitive rounds later, where it looks like he's broken again? Shouldn't he, if anything else, shouldn't he be dialing back the gym sessions to take stress off of his body? It seems like he's pushing himself to the extreme, and this is the byproduct of it. I mean, this is the first time he has completed all 72 holes in an official event in 14 months. He has barely played at all since the Hero World Challenge, and this is what he looks like. To me, that's the most pessimistic part or dreary outlook on all of this, is that after 4 months, when he sounded great and he said he wants to play once a month, this is as good as he can muster. And I think that's pretty drab.
Whoa, look who's crow's nest is
dark.
half. Look whose crow's nest is half full. I don't know how to come back to that. I will say, and this goes to, it was a couple of years ago, and Brandel Chambly had, and I think Rory had posted a picture online of him squatting some ridiculous amount of weight in the gym. And I think Brando had something snarky to say about it, or whatever the case may be. And I remember going to Rory at Riviera and asking him specifically, like, okay, I want to figure this out. Like, I'm trying to play the middleman here. And why do you do this? Like, give me an idea. Like, it's impressive. We all know, but is this just you being, trying to be cool and look how much I can squat in the gym? Or is there a mission here? And I will give Rory credit. He sat down and talked to me. And the answer was, when he was younger, he was a little overweight for someone of his age and his height. And he said he had back problems. And he realized then that if he wanted to do this for a living, if he wanted to be a pro golfer, that he had to be in better shape, that he had to get himself into a position where he had the strength to do the things that he wanted to do. As fast and hard as he swings, like, there has to be a lot of strength in the core. There has to be a lot of strength in the legs. When it comes to Tiger Woods, and I'm not the swing guy, you're not a swing guy, so I think we need to be careful here, because what I see when he swings the golf club, especially the driver now, is someone who's trying to create a lot of speed and a lot of power with his upper body. And that's,
he's enormous.
He is. I mean, he is really upper body. He is huge. And I think that is a byproduct. That is a mission of his, because he realizes he can't use his legs. I can go through this because I wrote a bad book a long time ago, but there's 5 ways to create power in the golf swing. And the most effective way that I've been told, or that when I wrote the book that I was told, was post, which is essentially how you drive through your left leg for a right-hander. It's how you drive through your left leg and sort of lock out your knee, for lack of a better term. He can't do that. Like, his right ankle is so fused, it's so limited. He can't get to his left side like he used to. So he has to create some sort of power some way. And that's all in the upper body. My guess is that that's what he was talking about today in Tiger terms. As loose as I can put it. Like, he's trying to create a scenario where he's trying to explain to you that, all right, this is the only way I can play golf now. And so to maintain that, I need to be bigger, stronger, faster with my upper body, because I can't do it with my lower body like I've done my entire career. And anyone who questions that, I would just say, go back and look at Tiger Woods in 2008 versus what we have right now. And even in 2008, when he was dealing with a lot of stuff, he still created most of his power with his lower body and his legs. That, to me, is the only thing that makes sense, but we don't know when it comes to Tiger Woods. So to be fair, I'm kind of speculating right now.
That was a physiology lesson.
Yeah, I can give you the other 4 ways to create power if you have any interest. No one has any interest.
That's a podcast first. Speaking of very fit golfers, probably a natural transition then, Rex, to one Rory McIlroy ends up in a tie for 22nd. now more than 10 years removed from his last major championship. Again, he would be historically resilient if he does eventually win the
Love
Masters,
that line. People
needing
love that
this
line.
many attempts to try and complete the fourth and final leg of the career Grand Slam outside of a second round 77, when again, the conditions were insanely difficult. What do you take out of another miss for Rory McIlroy at Augusta National?
I mean, it's hard to read that book because he sort of said the same things he said over the last few weeks. And when he talks about his finishes, they're all, I think, what he calls middling. And they're middle of the pack. They're 20-something-ish. Like, not terrible, but not what we expect from Rory McIlroy. And I think in this particular case, he was willing to sort of just embrace the idea that, no, I just didn't have it this week. And again, we can go back to all the things we talked about starting earlier in the week, that he tried to reinvent the wheel and it didn't work this time around. And my guess is he'll do something very, very similar next year. And he'll try to reinvent the wheel next year and try to come up with a way of doing this. I guess my question would be, at what point does it feel like futility? Because he's still young. He's still
Speaking of getting dark.
I know. He's still young. He's still winning. He's still winning on the DP World Tour. He's still contending on the PGA Tour. There's no reason to think that he can't win the Masters into the foreseeable future. Actually, I was shocked in San Antonio last week when he talked about, I feel like I have 6 or 7 more years at Augusta National. And I'm doing the math in my head thinking, no, you have to have more than that. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. Like, we have seen players compete well into their 40s at the Masters. It's a place where institutional knowledge matters, and he's strong and he still hits it a mile. Like, I don't believe that. I'm basing this on what he says, and it's not going to get any easier. And you keep falling back to the line that it would be historically resilient.
Because it's true.
It's true. It's a good line because it's true. That's why it's it. But I'm not going to say he was defeated, because I don't think he was. I feel like he came into here with a good game plan. And I would equate this maybe to what we talked about with Jordan Spieth a few days ago, that the aggravation with him was he wants to adhere to the idea that this is my process. I need to take the results out of it. And I think Rory, to a certain extent, is doing the same thing. That, okay, my process is going to change each year, but I need to take the results out of it and try to continue to build on what I'm doing. But man, it keeps getting harder and harder.
Yeah, I don't think the process was necessarily the issue here, because on its surface, it makes a lot of sense. Rory McIlroy wanted to play a lot of tournament golf heading into the Masters. The idea being, hey, let's get some reps. Let's see where my game is. And then hopefully by the time you get to mid-March or the beginning of April, you just sort of maintain for the rest of the major season and you're always in contention. So I think the planning was good. It's clear that the execution has not been as good as Rory McIlroy looked in his first 2 events of the year in Dubai. It's clearly been a struggle over the past couple months. And I think if anything, this Masters tournament was proof that the guys who played well and the guys who finished the best were the ones who had an uncluttered mind. Where Scottie Scheffler, as you are wont to say with swing coach Randy Smith, has not been working on anything while they've been going on this tear. Ludvig Oberg,
same old. He told me last night. Same old.
Is an absolute machine. Meanwhile, we saw, I think, some frailties in the final round, or at least some point this week, from players who are searching, or were, to use Kyle Morikawa's phrase from Monday, a little iffy with their confidence. We saw that with Morikawa in the final round, shooting 74 and getting out sharp shooted by Sheffler. Nice. Definitely should not have tried that one. Xander Schauffele, who is in the midst of a swing change with Chris Como and his father, not able to muster a run on Sunday. And now we see Rory McIlroy shooting 73 in the final round, also the 77, where he was exposed in the very difficult conditions to fall outside the top 20. I mean, it's really hard to come to Augusta National when you're not in full command of your shots. You can hold it together for 36 holes. You may even be able to hold it together for 54 holes. But to do it and to compete against a player who's playing at Scottie Scheffler's caliber and level right now, it's a really tall ask when you're holding on with Band-Aids.
I just wanted to add this about Rory before we move on. He was asked specifically, and again, we can't do sound, so I'm gonna read, which doesn't make for a very good podcast. So I apologize. But will you scale back a little bit? We all know his schedule coming into this week. Like, it's been a brutal schedule. No, he says, the next 2 weeks I'm playing Hilton Head. I'm playing New Orleans, where he's playing with Shane Lowry in the team event. I'll take a week off between the Zurich Classic and the event at Quail Hollow. Play Quail Hollow, play the PGA the very next week, take a week off, then play 4 in a row. Loving golf at the moment, loving it. Like
He's loving golf.
He is, but I would caution against, like, he's going to reach a tipping point. There's going to be burnout at some stage. And I appreciate what he's doing. Like, he's trying to reinvent the wheel. He's trying to come up with a better way of doing this. And look, he won last time the PGA was at Louisville, so we'll talk about that in a few weeks. Like, he has to be the favorite going into that. But man, he seems like he's wearing himself out.
Rory's the favorite going into Louisville.
Well, no, he wouldn't be the favorite. Scottie's going to be the favorite going into Louisville.
Do you want to go ahead and revise that one for the record?
We're gonna do the cliche where Scottie is in a category by himself. I think it's fair. We can just say that, right? Can we just do what we did back in the Tiger era and just say that? Yeah, Rory's among the favorites behind Tiger.
It is interesting because I don't think you saw full swing in the season 2, but they pitted Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka in this sort of faux rivalry that they have in the race to get a 5th major championship, which Brooks obviously did at the PGA. But there was one poignant moment. I actually believe it was at the PGA Championship, so a month later than this. So Rory misses the cut at the Masters, right? Goes to the PGA. He's just skipped Hilton Head to try and take a sort of mental reset, finishes inside the top 10, but doesn't really factor at Oak Hill. And there's a moment with his manager and caddy Harry Diamond where Rory essentially admits that his game and his swing are not in a place where he can access that next level anymore. There was exasperation. There was frustration. I do wonder, with how much Rory is going to be playing over his next month or two, if he will reach that breaking point again. If he will come to some realization that I'm 34 years old, or he turns 35 next month, I'm squandering the best years of my career. Do I need to seek another direction? Like Scottie Scheffler, who has used Randy Smith his entire career. Rory McIlroy has been with his boyhood coach, Michael Bannon, who's not living in the United States, who we see sparingly throughout the course of the calendar year. Does Rory blow it all up to try and squeeze 2 or 3 more really profitable years in the major championships? I hope he doesn't, because if you look at what he has done in the major championships over the past 2 or 3 years, I forget what the stat is, but I think it was like 9 of his last 10 have resulted in top 10 finishes. This obviously was one for the worst, as well as the miscut last year at Augusta National. If he continues to put himself in the positions, you would think one would break his way, including last year at the U.S. Open. Did not do much wrong and finished a shot behind Wyndham Clark. But I do wonder, Rex, will there be a tendency to want to blow it up with how much golf he's playing, and if the results and the performance and the shot quality does not improve? I think that's something that we're going to have to look at over the next couple of starts. How about Max Homa? The narrative surrounding Max Homa over the past couple years has been, hey, this guy is great in PGA Tour events. He just won in South Africa, but he does not step up in the major championships. It was a Sunday that I'm sure he learned a lot from. Ended up with weekend rounds of 73, including the miss on 12, making double bogey that I'm sure he will be ruining for a very long time. What did you take from Mad Max's step into the spotlight at a major championship?
It was a good step, because you and I talked about this the other night, the idea that his record in the majors was awful. I don't think you and I touched on him at all on Wednesday night. I'd have to go back and listen. I would be surprised if we did. And it was for good reason, because he not only has he never played this golf course well, he's never played particularly well in the major championship. So I think what he did this week was a good step in the right direction. And certainly when you listen to him talk, like, look, Scottie is next level when it comes to keeping things simple. And when you talk to him after the fact It's, what were you thinking about out there? I did find it, and I don't want to go back to the Scottie conversation, but someone asked him about, would you have really walked off the golf course? And Scottie's reaction was, what are you talking about? And then if your wife went into labor, you said you would walk off the golf course. And he goes, it didn't even dawn on me. Like, that's how locked in I was that, yes, he probably would have walked off the golf course, but that hadn't dawned on him. I do like sort of Max's mentality. And it was something he said on Saturday night, last night, going into the final round, that every time he let thoughts get into his head of what could go wrong, he immediately replaced them with the idea of, I wanted to think about the thoughts of what could go right. Like, what's going to happen if everything goes right? And in that scenario, it's winning the Masters. I don't know that he's ready to win a major just yet. He certainly has the tools. When you look at what he did well this week, I mean, it was wildly impressive with his ball striking. And his putting was above average. I mean, the things that he did well this week, you would think going into the remaining 3 major championships of the season are going to serve him well. When it comes to Max, though, you always want to question, how is this going to impact him mentally? Is he going to take from this, oh, I didn't get it done on Sunday, which be sort of the negative slant, or look what I was able to do over 4 days. Of course, I can do that again at Louisville and maybe do it one step better.
Yeah, I think his sports psychologist, Julie Ellion's work is probably cut out for her. Max tends to get deep inside his own head. I think he did say, though, all the right things, at least when meeting with us. Maybe he beats himself up a little bit more on Sunday night, although I don't think he really will. In that, for the past 4 days, he has at least been in or around the lead. And, he did not record a birdie for 32 holes. He made a couple of mistakes on the second nine that cost him some momentum here at Augusta National. But I don't think he necessarily faded or faltered in a way where he would have to question his process. I think this was much needed validation in a major championship setting and comported himself well. It's clear that he's a more complete golfer, and he is at least ready to more consistently contend in a major championship than he was even a year ago. The top 10 finish at the Open Championship last year, and now a tie for third at the Masters. He's certainly trending in the right direction. But I think as we tie this all together with Scottie Scheffler, he said it's bittersweet, Max Homa said, leaving the golf course tonight because I feel accomplished, but I also feel like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean anything. Essentially, I still lost, and I still lost by 7 shots to an incredible golfer who is absolutely going nowhere. Any parting thoughts, Rex, from Augusta National as we wrap up this recap podcast?
I would just real quick be with Max and look, clearly he was hurting after the round. Anyone who lost to Scottie Scheffler today probably is going to just have to process that over the next few hours, because you lost to the world number 1 and this dude is in full flight. Like, we just got to have a whole conversation, 20-minute conversation about, is this Tiger-esque? And we hate doing that, but it very much is Tiger-esque. So I think anyone who came up short today should probably give themselves the benefit of the doubt. And, well, okay, that dude was playing really, really well. We'll see how it works out. I will say 2 things about Augusta this year. One, this is really the first one, and Colin Morikawa brought this to my attention. He played his first Masters in 2020, and he was saying that since 2020, he's only played when it's cold and wet and soft, relatively soft. This year was the first firm and fast Masters that we've seen in a long time. And I have to admit, it's fun when it's like this. I think this is the best Masters. And you're going to look at the final and say, oh, well, the final 9 didn't play out the way they wanted to. We didn't have the excitement. Maybe, but I still think this is the golf course playing at its best.
I agree. The wind was obviously severe on Thursday and Friday. I mean, Masters veterans were saying they can't ever recall a more challenging day. The fact that they were getting blasted by sand, and it looked like the green on 18 was top dressed with so much sand blowing out of the bunker. That was certainly severe. I don't think anyone necessarily wants to see that. That's obviously great theater. We enjoyed it. Ratings were up. It's great to write about carnage in that sort of setting. But I'm with you on the weekend. I thought it was perfect. Scottie Scheffler shot one of the rounds of the day at 68. He went and won the Masters. No one lost it. Scottie Scheffler went out and won the Masters, and that's exactly what you want to see. I think big picture with the game of golf, Rex, this is the first time that all of the best players in the world, minus Taylor Gooch, of course, who thought that this would have an asterisk attached to it, reconvened for the first time in 8 or 9 months since the Open Championship. That felt like a win. It felt like a big tournament. It felt like everyone was here. It felt like people were engaged. It felt like people were watching. It felt like people cared. It felt like something significant was being undertaken, because it was. Because no one, absolutely no one, asked Scottie what he thought about earning $3.6 million here on Sunday night at Augusta National. When legacy is attached, when history is at stake, when there is meaning and significance to the proceedings, that is when golf is at its best. I thought Sunday was a perfect showcase for that. Having 4 extraordinary players tie for the lead with 11 holes to go in the most important tournament individually that we have in the game of golf. I thought it was a great week. I'm tired. I'm ready to file this last column and drink a beer and head home on Monday night. But all in all, I do think this was a win. 20th Masters for you. How will you remember it?
It was enjoyable on a lot of fronts. One, I got a ticket this year for a lot of people in my family, so I was able to sort of treat them to it. And I think I said this early in the week. I like seeing it through their eyes. Seeing my son was up here early in the week, my father-in-law was here, my mother-in-law, and I guess after 20 years, you kind of get a little jaded. And hearing all the stories from them over the last couple of days, you're like, you realize how special this place is. So I certainly enjoyed that. I'll remember that. And Scottie. Like, look, this is a historic run. And in the middle of Tiger's run, it was earlier in my career. I was younger. I probably didn't appreciate it, probably like I should have. This one I'm going to appreciate. Like, what he's doing is special.
Absolutely is. I don't think there's a better example for the game of golf. He's tough to write about, but Scottie Scheffler is clearly an extraordinary human. He was raised right. And I'm sure when he and Meredith welcome a child in the next couple of weeks, he'll be a great father as well, but a very deserving Masters champion. To be sure, shout out Ghost, who covered his 46th
David Weston
Masters tournament this year. Always great catching up with him. I cannot thank you guys enough for listening all week to these Golf Channel podcasts with Rex and Lav. We love bringing these mini pods to you each and every night from the biggest events in the sport. We really appreciate all the downloads, all the views on YouTube, and all of the support. Thanks for saying hi all week at Augusta National as well. We will be doing it again next month from Valhalla for the PGA Championship. We'll bring one to you each and every tournament round as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the Golf Channel podcast with Rex and Lab. We'll be back on Wednesday, where Rex will be in Hilton Head for the start of the RBC Heritage, yet another signature event on the PGA Tour. We'll have a full preview there and cleaning up anything else we missed over the past couple of days. Thanks as always for listening. Talk to you in a couple of days.